Indiana Jones, Indiana It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones, Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute. This is the podcast where we slice into Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull just to see what it does when exposed to the air. I'm Pete Mummert.
I am Tom Taylor.
I'm Joe Christopher. Bear me with my mummy cronies, Porter.
And today we're very happy to welcome film editor, movie buff, and excellent podcast host of Minute Impossible, Chris Ramirez. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you. And
Yeah.
I think it's no secret that you pretty much single-handedly carry that podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I keep telling that to Jonathan, but he's got to be in charge.
He's one in every bunch.
I'm really happy that he invited me on to be his co-host on that one. I mean, it's one of those things that we went to college together, so we've known each other a long time. So it's fun to connect with him on that level with this podcast, and it's opened up a whole new world for me. So I appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, you guys have a great show. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I like your tech of the ep each episode.
Yes, as do I. I really enjoy that.
Cool. Well, today we are talking about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and specifically minute 52. And minute 52 begins with Indy deciding that Oriana might have survived after all, and it ends with the Spanish conquistador rotting away before our very eyes. And I think this is interesting because Indy goes 7. Oriana and his men might have made it out of the jungle after all. And I don't think it's ever been open to historical question that Oriana might not have died in Brazil. And I'm wondering, does this wild speculation Indy's engaged in here make him the equivalent of an ancient alien theorist? Because he's literally just like jumping to amazing conclusions.
Well, even the fact that he counts 7 bodies, he's like, there's only one explanation. This must be Oriana and his men.
Yeah. It couldn't possibly be anybody else.
Yeah.
You what's crazy is I thought to myself, so what would Indy have done if he had only counted 6 culturally out of context mummies? Like, you know what I mean? He'd be like, oh, pack your things, go grab the backpack, Mutt. We're out of here.
We're in the wrong catacomb. We got to go find another one.
Dig it in the wrong place.
Exactly.
This room's only got 6.
I have a question for you, Pete.
Okay.
Why are these Europeans mummified?
I have no idea.
Yeah. This is going to be tough for like the next handful of minutes. We're going to keep asking these questions. And I don't know if the movie's ever going to answer us.
And you can tell they're Europeans because we'll see this more in the next minute. But when we see the 7th mummy, next to it, there's like a big pile of treasure. And on that pile, on the top of it, is a very European style crown. And there's no way that was found in Peru. So did one of these guys travel with his own crown?
Don't you?
I know I do everywhere I go.
Yeah, just in case.
Well, I was thinking about this. So I mean, so you're a European. You're a conquistador, and you're like, say, I have an idea. I'd like to be mummified. First of all, that's not in the Catholic tradition. Outside of Pete, after I said that though, and noticed that, I thought about what's that monastery in Italy where they have all the mummies?
Oh yeah, that's right.
the Catholic monastery in Italy where it's all, you go into the catacombs and they're all like mummified. The former monks and priests. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, outside of that was sort of the only incidents I could think of where that's in the Catholic tradition, but that's a different thing. They're not all like wrapped up like this, and I'm like, so who mummified them?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are they suggesting that they were mummified by some sort of alien worshippers, or they had another person who mummified them and left? I was kind of confused by that myself. Because there's 7 of them, and they're all wrapped up, and I mean somebody had to do it because
Yeah,
nobody wrapped themselves up.
Right.
And that raises a really interesting question, because unless somebody was mummifying them like over a period of 30 or 40 years, they all died at the same time.
Yeah.
And for them,
Right.
like, so that either means someone killed them or some kind of catastrophe happened.
And why are they being preserved?
It's a great question.
If they were murdered, or if they or whatever, however they died, why would anybody who's not one of them, obviously, because they'd all be, I mean, unless there were 8 guys and he just mummified all his friends who died suddenly. It's like, oh, I can't leave them like this. I'm going to mummify them and then take a pocket full of change and leave.
And decided to put like as we get to it later, the skull in there,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a crime scene that makes no sense.
No.
This is weird.
It's like Seven. All of a sudden, there's there's the motive that we're not aware of by John Doe.
It's just a complete, like, was it for some reason watching this, I think that this was Oriana's idea. Like, he's like, he's like, I got an idea. When I die, I would like to be buried with all my, all my monies and all my mummies.
Things got weird in the jungle, and they all just had some weird, bro pact. Like, hey, man, I love you. When we go, let's all just get wrapped up in sleeping bags and just live forever.
But why do you want to keep all your money with you if you die in Peru? Because you're not going to be able to spend it in Peru. Like, this is still, like, Peru is still an Incan empire, basically. And they're not going to be able to spend all this. So unless they take it back to Spain, it's kind of worthless.
Yeah.
And there's no tradition of mummification that I know of in Spain.
Could that not have been their end goal, was to get back to their, I don't know, ships or something and get back to, I know they're kind of on the wrong, are they on the wrong side of South America?
Yeah, they're on the wrong, yeah. I mean, it seems like that had to have been their goal. So it seems like somebody must have killed them.
I mean, my understanding is how they would get this out of there. I know was like you'd have to go north to Cartagena, which was like a huge Spanish port that would leave. And that's where like a lot of the gold was exported out of South America, at least that region. I don't know. It might be pretty far from where they are here in Peru, but I know so much of the gold that did go back to Spain came out of Cartagena, and it had to go there first. So I don't understand. You're like, this treasure or booty, is supposed to be going back to Spain, right?
Yeah, they were by law they were supposed to send back. At least
I think a conquistador, he could keep like 20%. Wasn't that like
some like small percentage? Yeah. But even like the guy that had to carry all this gold is not light, so to carry all this gold down into this crypt.
That's the interesting part.
Yeah.
Somebody put a lot of work into this.
Yeah,
because if you think if it was one of their friends that did this, he would have just killed them. Like he wouldn't have mummified them.
Yeah, no. You can easily imagine them all getting killed over something like that. Like, it's all mine now. I got gold lust, and I'm going to kill you all. Then he wouldn't take the time to mummify them all. That doesn't make any sense.
No, he just would have killed them. He wouldn't spend the time to do all of that. I guess unless he doesn't want them found.
Well,
it seems like you'd be more likely to find them if they're mummified.
Yeah, with all the gold around them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody did put a lot of time into this, and I think somebody didn't put a lot of time into this.
Well, I think it's remarkable behavior for an archaeologist in the 1950s to do the same thing that Spalko does, and he just takes a knife and jabs it into one of these mummies.
He just digs in.
Yeah,
Christmas goose.
Like you expect to open it up, and there's just a guy with a big gash down the front of him.
Yeah. You just destroyed the mummy.
Well, what's interesting is when Indy starts ripping the mummy open, Mutt gets visibly uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, I noticed that too. I was really surprised because for all the grief that Shia LaBeouf gets regarding this movie and other movies, he's actually a pretty good actor when he was younger. And, he's a good actor. He's still a good actor. The movies that he's got in right now are quite good, and he's quite good in them. And so when I saw that reaction, I was like, that would be about the right reaction most people would have, seeing that something happen, and let alone not knowing who this person that you're following around is. It's like, oh my God, they might not be right in the head.
Yeah.
He is. He's like, why would you ruin this pristine artifact?
Exactly.
Well, is this the big payoff for Mutt's knife flipping earlier? Because he kind of flips the knife and hands it to Indy before Indy dives in. Is that the payoff for
That's the big
Mutt
payoff.
flipping the knife earlier?
Yeah. So finally, when Indy asks for a knife, he'll be able to give it to him with a little flourish.
You know what?
But that's what Indy does. Like, there's some, he tries to rip the thing open. He's like, you don't have a knife, do you? But he doesn't read that as sarcastic at all. But he knows that Mutt has a knife.
Yeah, because all Mutt's been doing is flipping the knife.
Yeah, Mutt will not stop with the knife. And so that line should be, oh, you don't have a knife, do you? Like, duh, you obviously have a knife. But he sincerely asks, oh, it's too bad we don't have a knife. You don't have a knife, do you? It always strikes me as very weird.
This is Mutt's cousin Oliver moment. I mean, you're like, this is the way of him saying, no, actually, it's okay. You are useful.
If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to open the mummy and make his face dissolve.
Exactly.
Thanks, Mutt.
Exactly. You're the 1 millionth person into Disneyland. We all get to go for free.
Oh my God. That happened.
Yeah.
I do have to say, though, that this, when Indy cuts it open and pulls the wrapping away and we see a perfectly preserved face and then it immediately starts to decay. This reminds me so much of what Dr. Jamie was saying. I don't remember, it was during, I think it was during Last Crusade when she was saying Victorians used to open mummies just to watch them decay.
Oh,
I remember that.
Oh,
That's
wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's super weird.
Yeah.
That's a nice effect too. It's
yeah,
a nice,
it's very much an
subtle.
old school Indiana Jones effect. I thought it was very very subtle.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was practical or if it was a combination of practical and digital, but I thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
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 Definitely.
Well, maybe that's why Indy did it. I mean, he was born during the Victorian era.
Oh, sweet. I heard my dad talk about this.
I know. Maybe we can do this. I have to say, I think that this is one of the greatest Indiana Jones moments in the franchise because it perfectly captures. Yeah, I'm serious. It perfectly captures Indiana Jones, quote, archaeology.
Yeah.
He finds a 500-year-old mummy, perfectly preserves so that the deceased looks like, quote, he died yesterday. And then Indiana Jones wreaks 500 years of decay upon this cadaver in 6 seconds.
Well, I think that's the interesting part about it is that we've got this sort of hero worship about Indiana Jones nowadays. Even back then in the 80s, we still had it, but he was always kind of a sketchy kind of guy. Not as bad as Belloc or any of those other guys, but he was still pretty sketchy in what he was doing, And he's always bringing up the fact to Marcus Owner, or Marcus always brought up, "Oh, I'm sure you followed the guidelines," like he was just saying that just to make sure he had his bases covered. "Oh, I'm sure you followed the guidelines, Indy, but so we'll still pay you." But he was sketchy as all of them were. That's why the movie was called Raiders of the Lost Ark, And by the time we got to India, Last Crusade, people had seen him as, his basically the good guy because he was, but with his dad, and so we had more sympathy for him. But he was still doing kind of shady stuff in that movie, and I think by the time we got to this one, 20 years later, people are still, Indiana Jones would never do something like this. I'm like, are you sure?
Did you see the first movie?
I'm sure that at some point he would do, he would leave Mutt behind if he had to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm a little surprised he didn't run around and cut open all the others just to watch the same thing happen.
Exactly.
I'll just open it a little bit this time. Here, get the light in there.
Well, the best part about it is he blames the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't
He's like,
oh
no, it's a. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
It's not actually that the air doesn't agree with them, Indy.
It's that you opened his mummification. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, take that, mummy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, you're a film guy, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on how Crystal Skull works or doesn't work as part of the Indy franchise.
The interesting thing to me is that when it came out that summer in in 2008, I was excited about it, just as everybody else probably was. And then I had seen Iron Man a couple of weeks prior to that. And so Iron Man had all of a sudden jumped up to like, oh my God, I felt like watching the original Indiana or Raiders of the Lost Ark movie when I watched Iron Man.
Mhm.
And I did enjoy Crystal Skull, but I was disappointed because it didn't feel the same way that the other films felt and the same way that even Iron Man felt to me. It felt kind of, to me, I think it works within the context of the Indiana Jones mythos, but at the same time, it's missing something. There's I saw this earlier today on Twitter, and I think it's true. I think a lot of it has to do with Janusz Kaminski's cinematography. I think Janusz is a very good cinematographer when it comes to certain types of films that he and Spielberg do. But this was not one of the ones where I felt like Spielberg should have had him as a cinematographer, because it's missing that sort of pop that Dougie Sacombe did with the first three films, and you feel it emotionally because the colors aren't the same, the film doesn't feel the same,
right?
And as a whole, I mean, it's Spielberg doing what Spielberg does with the same crew, but it also feels like it's Spielberg doing what Spielberg does with the same crew. It's like it's got a kind of lived in, felt, been there, done that sort of feeling to it. But there are sequences that are actually quite good. Like I think the opening is really good with in the warehouse, and I think this sequence is actually very, very old school Indiana Jones films. And then there's other sequences where it's like, they could have done that live or they could have done that without effects, and it feels like it's like a lot of great scripts or a lot of okay scripts put together into one, and it doesn't make a great script. Especially when you hear, oh well, this was in the Darabont draft, and this was in the M. Night Shyamalan draft, and this was in somebody else's draft, and you're like, wow, I get it that they put things together, but there was a cohesive follow through, at least in the first one, the first Indiana Jones, by between what their story notes had come up about, with Spielberg and Lucas and Kasdan, and I think that's those elements are missing, and I think it's that same idea of when you have an unlimited budget, and you've got all the power, you can make anything you want, and sometimes that's not a good thing. It's like the 1941 of Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah,
and I like 1941. It seems like
Spielberg really wanted to make 1941.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced he wanted to be here for this one.
Yeah, I know, and that's the hard part, is that it's like it's hard to understand what his motivation was on it, and that's the hard part. I mean, my son really likes the movie a lot, and I'll watch it, every once in a while, but it's not like Raiders where I put it on at least once a month, or Last Crusade, the same thing, But I think within the context of it, I mean, there's this. If it was going to be, like The Force Awakens was to Star Wars, where you've got a whole new generation being introduced to this character, because there is a whole generation that's been born since the last one. There was a lot more that they could have done to make that happen, and I'm sure that's what they're going for with the next one, if and when they actually make it.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. It's interesting about 1941. This is completely off topic, but we covered 1941 on our Patreon show, and to this day, I can't figure out why 1941 is a bad movie.
Neither can I.
Like I admit that it's not great, but on paper and even watching it, it seems to have all the elements of a great movie, but somehow it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch when you're seeing the snowball fall down the hill, basically, as you watch it. You're like, oh, wow, they're really like going to town here. That's crazy. It's like, that you can see the Spielberg power as the movie goes along, and it gets crazier and crazier. And you can see everybody who had some semblance of say over things as it happens. And it's interesting because that's like this one. That's why I said it's like, the same sort of thing. There's some really great and funny moments in that movie, and some really spectacular effects and spectacular sequences. But as a whole, it's like it's missing something cohesive to make it work together, But it's not a bad movie. Like, I've seen bad movies, and to me, it's not a bad movie. It's just it's not a great movie.
Yeah, that's
and there's that point with Spielberg to me, is that he's made so many great movies, so many movies that have had an impact on all of us and our children and our parents. And so we know when somebody says, oh, it's a Spielberg film, we've already got expectations through the roof with it for the most part. And even once in a while, there was a point where he was making, very serious films. And I was like, man, I miss old Spielberg, And so, you hope for when something like this comes around that it's going to be the same sort of energy. And when it's not, you're disappointed. But I felt like, he had some really good energy with Ready Player One, which I was impressed with. But so I'm hopeful with, even West Side Story, but hopeful that, he's got, since he's going to be working with Kathleen Kennedy again, that hopefully he's got, a little bit more say and more fun with the next one that they make.
Yeah, I hope so too.
What would be something that you would like to see them do? Because we talk, the first three have this religious, MacGuffin sort of thing, and this one is aliens, which we've said is a little bit outside the box. Would you, what would you imagine or like to see the fifth one? Like back to something religious or more something along the lines of I don't know, paranormal.
I like the idea of the mysterious and the unexplainable. That's what was, as religious as the second, the first and the third one were, there was still an element of, okay, that's a story we read in the Bible, or that's a story that people talk about, but there's still an air of mystery to it that kind of creeps up on you. And Spielberg's films for a long time had that as a given. Things like Close Encounters, Poltergeist, even E.T., there was this air of mystery. Like it gave you this like weird, uncomfortable feeling before you'd actually seen it because you didn't know what to expect. And I'd like something like that again myself,
Yeah, I like that. That's a good.
And also, I think we've talked about this. Or I talked about it on the maybe on one of the Indiana Jones posts that you guys had on the Facebook page. But I would have loved this have been that he'd had a daughter instead of a son. Because we've got all these, issues of Indy and young girls, and really make him uncomfortable, especially if the daughter was just like him and treated men the same way that he treated women. and
I think he had a daughter in one of the earlier versions.
I think they did. I think the Darabont draft had a daughter in it, if I believe. But I always thought that would have been a great thing, especially when he was young. He was still young enough to pull off the leading male guy, but at the same time having a young up and coming actress who everybody is aware of playing this daughter that he doesn't know is his daughter is just great. That builds up very much like a Howard Hawks sort of situation. Those old Howard Hawks films.
That'd be great.
So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, talking about family, Jer.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Pete. Speaking of family, this just in from Professor Sister Porter. Did Indy just go hog wild and slice open all the mummies like Christmas morning?
Oh boy, that's mine! Oh boy, mummy, that's mine!
And did he exclaim, "Now it belongs in a museum"?
I kind of picture him like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer is just eating donut after donut after donut, and he gets fatter and fatter. Like I feel like Indy would just be stuffing so much gold into his pockets, and he would just be getting bigger and bigger.
Just starts eating it.
Or he could have opened 6 of them and left the seventh one, perfectly preserved. Oh, look, it's the only one, guys. I found it. Take it back to the museum.
Yeah.
6 open, 1 preserved. Get more money for it.
What does it mean?
Mint in box.
Exactly.
Mint and sleeping bag.
Well, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Chris.
Yeah,
this
of course.
was a lot of fun. And you've got another podcast. I don't know if you'd like to talk.
Yeah, we got. I do the Minute Impossible podcast with Jonathan Howell. You can find us at minuteimpossible.com. There we've got the first and second films of the Mission Impossible franchise already completed. And we're just about ready to start up on Mission Impossible 3, J.J. Abrams' third film in the franchise. So that should be fun. We also have a couple of special episodes within there, the context of everything for like Fallout and when things like that happen with new announcements for the movie. We did a couple episodes here and there. But you can find us on Twitter at Minute Impossible or at Minute Impossible. And you can also find us on the Impossible Minute Force group on Facebook. So come join us.
Yeah, check it out. I did a week on that with my good friend Doug Greenberg.
Yeah, we had a good time with you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. And any last things you gentlemen have to say?
You know, it is weird. Indy says again, he asks for the second time in maybe 4 minutes, give me some light.
It's really, yeah, Mutt actually already was sort of giving him light.
Yeah,
he was.
And there's all sorts of light everywhere.
Very brightly lit underground cave.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's
like in sitcoms where they turn off the light
and the whole
and
room
they immediately
off.
turn on another light.
Yeah,
the
blue nighttime light.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
again, that's one of those things we were talking about. I'm like, when in the original movies, if this sort of thing happened, it was like really dim, and they had the light right on their faces, and the object they were looking at, and the rest of it kind of fell into darkness because one, they were dealing with budget, and two, it wasn't overlit, and that part of this film is the issue I have with it is that it's to me it's overlit when it shouldn't be. It doesn't have any sense of fear or creepiness in the buildings that they go into. It's like, oh, it's a set. It feels like a set. But like with Last Crusade, I never felt like it was a set. Even when he was going through the trials at the end, I never felt like it was like a Hollywood set. I felt like, they did a great job, shooting this.
Yeah.
Well,
that's good. And listeners, if you like overlit, we are going to be beyond lit on Wednesday for minute 53 of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull here on the Indiana Jones Minute.
Pete, did you know that in this minute we have Daddy, Son, and Mummy?